Hi everyone, welcome back, and we have another guest here to do another interview. Spencer Hughes, another representative of the government of the student body, is here to talk to us about, well, just about everything we can come up with. Spencer, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, Spencer, of course, I know you pretty well, and I know kind of your political leanings, but let's go ahead and talk about first the environment on campus. You're very politically involved. In fact, we have a little bit of a package coming up later where you are part of a debate that some of our reporters covered, and very politically involved. What's kind of the environment been, at least from what you've been hearing?
Well, I think it's been great. There's been a lot of engagement from all sorts of different sides, not necessarily both sides because there are more than two, but there's been a lot of engagement from a lot of different kinds of students. So we've been able to see a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. The president visited campus earlier this year. Mitt Romney visited Ames a short while ago. And I know a number of students were at both of those events. So I think it's been a lot of fun to be on campus during a presidential election season and to be able to see that kind of engagement, people really taking ownership of their own democracy at such a young stage is really cool to see.
And I actually especially appreciate that, being a freshman and getting to, go from living in a small town to getting to be in Ames, the epicenter of politics, as it's been called. I actually wanted to ask you, do you think that freshmen such as myself that have had to move here have had problems getting out to vote because of not registering or just the tendency to move in general throughout the entire college population?
That can be a problem, but one of the great things about Iowa is that Iowa is actually one of, if not the easiest state to vote in. Early voting in Iowa starts all the way back in September, and it goes all the way up until the weekend before the election. And then people are able to register to vote at the polls on Election Day. So you don't have to register beforehand. And with all that in mind, there's no voter ID law in Iowa, so you don't have to have an ID. So with all those in place, it's really easy to vote. And from what I've heard, a lot of people have gone to vote to register at the polls. They haven't had any problems other than waiting in line. I've heard the lines have been very long today, which is a problem, but if you're going to have a problem, it's a good problem to have. A lot of people voting.
Did you vote today?
I voted early.
All right, so you voted early. By the way, just a quick reminder for those of you tuning in, you're watching ISU TV's special Election 2012 coverage coming up on the top of the hour, 10 o'clock here. You're also watching this online, isutv.stuorg.iastate.edu. Another quick reminder, if you want some Facebook photos, more results and things of that nature, twitter.com. Follow us at ISU TV. Now, Spencer, I sit next to you in class, actually Kelly Shaw's class, and you have some very interesting debates with some of the students that are in that class. And really, Iowa State seems to be that kind of environment, especially as we were talking just before you came on, a very strong conservative base here. I tend to know your political leanings, and I think you're not afraid to show that. But really, it seems that Iowa State, maybe more so than the other two Regents universities, really has that divided, and not so strong divided, but that at least equal side base.
Well, there is a very strong group of conservative students on campus. I'm not one of them. I'm a member of the Iowa State College Democrats. You might be able to tell by the blue shirt. I was sure to coordinate. But they're definitely there. And one of the stereotypes of a college campus is that it's just a bunch of liberals. But that's not the case here. But one of the best parts about it is being a member of the College Democrats and knowing a lot of people who are conservative or who are in the College Republicans, we're able to sit down and have discussions. We're able to sit down and have debates with one another and keep it civil. There's really no bad blood between us. We're able to talk about the issues. We might get up and leave and still disagree, but we don't hate the other guy for it. So that's something I really like about that as well.
Have you heard anything about the other two Regents schools and how they're leaning politically?
Well, I'm not as familiar with UNI, but Johnson County and Iowa City in particular is a very liberal area in general. So that's kind of the stereotype that it gets. And so I would think that it does have more of a slant to it than Iowa State, but I'm not sure.
And, of course, you just touched on the debates there a little bit ago. Why do you think there is such a difference, especially, at least in my experience, when I've interviewed people from both sides of the aisle, so to speak, or people who have very strong leanings one way or the other? It seems, at least to me, and once again, I don't have all the great worldly experiences some of the older generations have, but it seems to be that younger people can have a much more friendly discourse. When I have political discussions among fellow friends of mine, it seems to be a lot more friendly, a lot more peaceful. And do you think that's really just a generational thing, or do you think that there's just something that's kind of a coincidence?
Well, I'm not sure if it's a generational thing. Part of me thinks it's an Iowan thing, though. You know, we tend to be a little bit more laid back. We tend to be able to put things in perspective. That's just kind of the way that our culture is here. So that would be what my hypothesis would be. But maybe we're just all good people, you know, at Iowa State, and we've learned the value of being civil in disagreement.
And now I wanted to ask you, because right now we're showing some of the footage we got actually last night from Michelle and Barack Obama's appearance in Des Moines, their last ever campaign stop. And I kind of wanted to ask you, I know you weren't able to make the event, but how many of these Democratic events have you been able to make? And what do you think the impact is on some of your fellow Democrats and even those that are independent that lean maybe a little bit to the left?
Well, me personally, I was at the president's event when he was on campus earlier this year. I was at Kristi Vilsack's event when she visited campus just a couple weeks after the president's event. And we've also had the local candidates for Iowa House on campus a number of times. Lisa Heddens and Beth Wessel-Kershell have both been on campus. And that's a great way to really get students involved, is just to come to campus because, you know, everybody wants to be involved, everybody wants to take part, but it's easier to do so when the candidate comes to you and you don't have to go anywhere. So to have the candidates, at least from the Democratic side, come to campus and be able to meet with students on campus, I think was a great thing and really brought up enthusiasm and excitement and helped with voter registration, which is another thing. The Democratic Party gained 17,000 voter registration as a margin since September to make up for a little bit of the gap in Iowa.
Now, I know you're a little bit more familiar with the Democratic side, of course, but do you think there's a reason why the Republican side of stuff didn't come towards campus? Why they chose to appear in other places in Ames?
Well,
only the tough questions here, Spencer.
You know, no, I've heard that when Mitt Romney came to Ames, part of the reason to hold the event off campus was because if it was held on campus, the weather was going to be colder, and they didn't want to compare the event to Barack Obama because, let's face it, college campuses are typically more Democratic. Ames as a whole is typically more Democratic than the state. So that it's a smart political decision to not set up that comparison when you know it's going to be unfavorable to your own candidate. And Steve King, the congressional candidate, he has been to campus. He's held an event on campus, just like Kristi Vilsack has as well. The candidates for Iowa House that are running against Representatives Heddens and Wessel-Kershell, they've both been to campus as well. So the only candidate out of the main ones is Mitt Romney that hasn't been to the campus, and I can understand why that is. And
now there's been a lot of maybe attacks from the right, or at least there was maybe earlier, that Obama tends to be this guy who pals with celebrities and things of that nature. And I don't think Obama did anything really to quell that stereotype of him at the very least by bringing in some really big names, you know, Seth MacFarlane, who's won, you know, Emmys and things like that for his work, and of course Bruce Springsteen, future Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. I think he already is, but point is he brought in some of the big heavy hitters.
That's absolutely true, and he brought in Justin Long as well, of fame from Dodgeball. He was there too, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because the point is to bring up enthusiasm among young voters, and a great way to do that is to bring people that they want to see, because in general, young voters trend to Democratic candidates.
And I know in just a second we're going to have another update. We've got some bigger numbers now as a lot more of these states as the polls close here in the Mountain Time Zone. And we've got the graphic up now. Barack Obama up to 228 electoral votes, 173. And this, of course, just as of a few minutes ago, courtesy of our friends on the CNN Newswire. And it's been updating quickly and really just has been the actual number. Obama, of course, took California, which is really no surprise. A lot of those West Coast states have always traditionally gone very left, really since they became states. So I guess, Spencer, we'll kind of ask you. I know I saw your prediction for the election. I think you saw mine as well. And really, popular vote-wise, we were expecting something that's probably going to be split, if not Romney taking maybe the popular vote, at least in my opinion. What are kind of your thoughts about what we expect from Obama? We've seen numbers anywhere between right at that 270 number, right just above it, all the way as high maybe as 320, 330.
Well, after seeing some of the early results come in, it seems pretty clear that the margins that were established in some of the polls earlier before the election are pretty, they look like they're going to be pretty accurate. And one of my favorite people to read before the election was Nate Silver, who's the blogger for the New York Times that projects out the election. And he had Obama projected to win about 315 electoral votes before this election. And that seems like my prediction was 303. It seems like it's going to be right around there. I would expect the president to carry more than 300 electoral votes. It doesn't seem like it's going to be as close as a lot of people expected, just based on these early numbers.
And I guess my question for you, and I know we're studying this in class, is I find it very odd, at least to me, that the Electoral College, you can have so many votes, and really it's going to look like, if Obama gets that 300 number, it's going to look like a landslide on the electoral vote side, but half the country that's turning out to vote, at least half, could end up voting for Mitt Romney, probably 48, 49% of the population. Is it really a vote of confidence for Barack Obama, do you think? Or, not to say that he's won yet, and he clearly hasn't, because Romney still has states like Florida and Ohio he can carry, but if Obama ends up winning this could be one of those elections, much like the Bush-Gore election, a lot of controversy coming about it, maybe a bunch of recounts as well.
You know, that's absolutely right. I mean, I just saw that Florida is extremely close, and with 29 electoral votes, there's a good chance that neither candidate could get to 270 without it, because it's just so many. So if that is a recount, then the whole election is kind of thrown into disarray. But I think it's too early to be thinking necessarily about a Bush-Gore situation or something of that nature, because like I said, the numbers are looking better and better for the president as more of them come in. And he has the opportunity to pick up a lot more states that are close but leaning towards him, like Iowa, like Nevada, Colorado. Virginia is leaning a little bit more towards Mitt Romney, but Florida, Ohio, those are all states that the president could pick up and have a comfortable margin.
Now, I'd like to redirect our conversation to a little more local and personal level. The college Republicans and the college Democrats hosted a couple debates on campus and a few mock debates. How do you feel those debates help to educate students and help to get them involved with the political process?
Well, I think that they're a good thing to have because people can come and watch. And a lot of the audience is from either one party or the other, and that's to be expected. But not all of it is. And there's more to it than just having the event itself. It gets covered by the student journalists, you know, like ISU TV right here, the Iowa State Daily, and things like that. So ultimately, I think it's a good way to kind of get people involved. It helps create a discourse on campus. It gets people thinking. It gets people talking. And ultimately, that's what's important, to have people talk about the issues in a civil manner. And if you disagree, that's okay, but maybe you learn something. Maybe you change your mind.
How big was the turnout for your debates?
I participated in 2 debates. The turnout was pretty good at both. One was in Eaton Hall. The other one was in the Memorial Union. There was a third debate that I wasn't able to attend, but that was the largest turnout from what I'm aware. The 2 that I were at, turnout was between 40 and 50, and that other debate was pretty high. It was higher than that number.
Spencer, really appreciate you coming in tonight. I know we kind of left you out there in the studio to hang out to dry a little bit, but your time and your conversation always appreciated, and we'll see you down the road.
Thank you.
Now, I know coming up here in just a few minutes, we're actually going to have another pair of our reporters, Maria and Alyssa, back with the Democrats down here in Des Moines. And actually, we've got Maria and Alyssa, one of the 2 out there that are on the line right now. Let's turn it over to one of those ladies.